We finally finished the Eye of the Midnight Sun encounter arc, and honestly, I thought there was gonna be a little bit more fighting in this, especially after the assault on the Royal Capital arc, where there was an assault on the capital. I thought something else was gonna be happening during it like that. However, this arc did kind of make up for it for all the twists and turns it went through, and progressing the characters in an amazing way, especially giving us some awesome moments with Yami and Asta, and giving us some backstory about what's going on with Lich and the other Eye of the Midnight Sun guys. Like the reveals that came out of this alone with Lich, Yami, Fauna, and Asta were done so well, while also setting up all the threads that could lead into multiple directions to where this plot's going to be going, foreshadowing events, and also just having a lot of stuff like Raya pretending to be one of the Royal Knight captains, and how Ghost is connected to Licht. And I think this arc just set up so many good things, and also just did a great job at pushing our characters in a direction and making them progress and be better. Like, even Ghost had character development after me questioning what was going on with his character at the beginning. Even with his weird shit going on, I did like the few moments he got that showed him being a hero and being a team player. Plus, it was great to dive more into Asta and have him prove himself to everyone, showing that he can become Wizard King and that he deserves to be a magic knight. That he's not just some peasant that's weak, but instead he can fight along with the captains. Even if they're out of his range, he still could be used as a weapon. And I cannot wait to see what happens with Eye of the Midnight Suns and what they have in store for us for the future. But with that, let's talk about what's going to be happening in this video, because we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. Talk about the Eye of the Midnight Sun motives during this, character development for some of the characters, the revelations and twists that went on during this arc alone, as well as the impact on the story and what is set up for the next arc. Plus, to tie it all off, there are some fun moments and exciting moments that I do want to talk about. So let's start with the first part of this video, where we are going to be talking about the motives and what the Eye of the Midnight Sun were after. I will say I was not expecting to have Sally be the one using Neige and Barrow to steal children to suck out their magic, and based on the name of the arc alone, I was not expecting it to be kind of isolated into this one area. And with this, it did set up some interesting stuff too, like how Neji wasn't a horrible person. He was actually a decent person who just wanted friends, which in the end, it made him easy to manipulate, which is pretty much what Barrow was doing. He was using him. And I think this whole section was really important for Asta as well, because he saw these guys taking magic from kids. And as someone who doesn't have magic flowing through them, can't sense the mana, it hit him hard because he didn't have that gift. He didn't have the magic that these kids had, and now it's being taken away from him, which is why I thought what they did was really well done, because it shows his anger for these kids who are losing something that they were so fortunate to have compared to him. And I like how you had Asta even turning around and being like, this is why I can't forgive you, when he was fighting Barrow, because it's something that he never had, so he's not going to forgive the person that's taking it away from the people who are fortunate to have it. But when we get into the part where Sally came into the fight, you can really see how crazy she was. She turns Barrow into a mud monster, which, first of all, whenever you have someone who looks crazy like Sally and they say, oh, you said you'll do anything to get out of this, first of all, right there is a red flag. That's going to make you suspect that something bad's about to happen to you, because anyone with those crazy goddamn eyes are going to turn you into something or possibly kill you. On top of it, we literally had Sally biting Asta and saying that she wants him again, pretty much making this kid with no magic be her experiment. That's all she wants. But then we learn more about what the Eye of the Midnight Sun was after and why they were there, because we got the backstory because of Licht, showing that the Eye of the Midnight Suns aren't terrible people in a way, where this group was forced to be the bad guys because of the discrimination and everything else going on within this world. Like, stealing kids from magic is pretty messed up, and it is pretty freaking evil, especially if you're just trying to get your master back. Like, there's some really bad things they're doing there. However, you could see that Licht's people were killed, and they had a connection to mana, and it made it so it favors his kind, with Licht also having light magic, which is the rarest magic apparently. So they did a lot of things to set up how powerful he is as a character, and how powerful his group is, and where they came from, and what they're trying to get back. Because again, it showed the discrimination in the Clover Kingdom. It showed how the rich looked down on the poor. People were ranked by their power, but some had great power but were still discriminated on because of birth. For example, Yuno is a good example of that, because he has a lot of power, but because he comes from in the boonies, he's not really respected. Then you have people being hurt because they were born in another country, kind of like how Yami was discriminated on because he wasn't from the Clover Kingdom, and even showing that some people are starving when others have too much food to eat. So really showing that the Eye of the Midnight Suns are trying to break this system of discrimination and rich versus the poor, but they're not doing it in the best way, and they're doing it in more of a sinister way rather than trying to fight it properly. Which is also kind of why Yami has no respect for them. Even though he is a foreigner, he has faced discrimination, he still sees them as bad guys. But that kind of sums up what they're trying to do. So now let's jump into the character development with each character. And because I just spoke about Yami, let's jump into Yami first, because this arc put a new light fight on Yami. Because of what we've seen so far, he just seemed like this rugged, cool dude who got a little angry at times and did whatever the hell he wanted. And he's also the leader of this band of misfits, so it makes sense for him to be like this. However, this arc really showed that he cares about his squad and that he trusts them, and he wouldn't put them in situations he wouldn't think they're ready for, which I really liked because it gave us great character development for Asta because of him. Just like how he trusted Asta to join the fight with him to take down Licht, because he knew Asta could read the key and he knew he was ready to jump into the fight. Even if he was still a little underprepared, he trusted him. Even trusting Asta to take down Gildra. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so let me know. Because he knew Asta was a secret weapon to taking him down. His sword was anti-magic and he can't be sensed because he has no magic. So very interesting what they did there. And also, I really liked it because you had Yami and Asta kind of being similar too. Both of them are outcasts. Yami was from another land and he was even a fisherman, and he's just a foreigner in the Clover Kingdom. So he understands the discrimination and what everyone goes through. And it's also cool to learn about Ki, that he's able to use all his senses to sense and predict moves. And that's pretty awesome, again, because they gave that to Asta, who now can do that as well, because that's another tool in his arsenal to fight because he can't use mana. So this is just another thing that can help him have the upper edge against people who do have strong connection to mana and can detect stuff. And I really like it too because they're also both stubborn and determined. So I think that's why they're also really alike, and that Asta is going to be Yami's protege. So it's a lot of things here and there where you see the similarities as we're watching this anime, and I can't wait to see both of them interact more, because after this arc, it just did a really good job pairing them together. And because of that, it's going to be great to see him in the next arc coming up, because Julius was telling Yami he needs someone with no familial ties or social ties to go deal with this underwater temple. And it makes sense why he picked Yami, because he has no family here. It's just him. He's a foreigner from another land and he hasn't been back. But also showing that Yami, when he was younger, got the dark grimoire, which made everyone kind of scared of him because they're like, oh, look at this foreigner. He has dark magic? What a weirdo. Kind of just showing more discrimination, where you had this character be brought into this world. He got put into this kingdom who already discriminates about anyone who's not from that kingdom. Then he gets dark magic, which is also something that's considered creepy and not the norm. So that is another thing that made people discriminate against him. And I really liked how you showed that Julius, instead of being that person that would discriminate against him because he was a magic knight, he was more interested in the magic and nerded out about it and brought Yami under his wing, which I thought was really interesting, showing where the trust comes from too. Showing that maybe Yami is the only person that Julius can't trust at the moment, and also why he's the perfect person for this next arc. And I can't wait to see that, because it showed a lot about Yami as a character and who he's connected to and who trusts him. And I'm really excited to see what happens next. And then when we talk more about the character development, of course, we got our main character, Asta, who went through a lot as well. In the beginning, we had Asta showing compassion for his enemies, especially after he was enraged by Baro and Neji for what they were doing to the kids. But he realized that Neji wasn't all bad and could redeem himself, even offering to be friends once he pays for his crime. So showing that Asta is a good person, and, you know, he sees the good in people. I think it's just a key important piece of this arc too, even though it's pretty small, just showing how Asta is a good person, how he could easily have just cut him down, but instead he chose to look past it, see the person that Neji could be. We also had like a fantastic moment with Asta giving his cloak to Marco, giving him the strength to be brave and being like an older brother, and also just helping this kid be brave to keep the other kids safe. Just another thing to show him how he's going to become a good leader and how he can be that person who can inspire people, even using Fuegoleon's advice. First of all, he hits Rebecca over the head to try to get her to snap out of it, and then he even tells Ghost to stay calm and clear-headed, just like Fuegoleon did. So he's using that advice that he was given in the last arc towards now. It looks like he's going into a leadership role. Even though he's still a little immature and still unknowing, he's progressing. And one of the other big things that we got, which I mentioned it before, was him learning how to use Ki, and that's a great tool for his arsenal because he was able to take down Voltos without an issue. Like, as soon as he figured out how to use Ki, dude jumps through a freaking portal, decks Voltos in the head. I thought that was a really good moment. That was also one of my favorite moments. Also coming in and fighting Licht out of nowhere, hitting him with his sword, and then taking down Gildra later in the arc. Another ability that makes him stronger and also just gives him another tool in his toolbox to go against these enemies. And I can't wait to see how he uses it in the next arc and following, because I think there's obviously going to be different situations that are actually going to come in handy to be using it with, and I can't wait to see how it's used and if there's other things that go along with Ki that make him stronger. And speaking of the moment where he took down Licht, I really like how you had Nozzle doubting him and being like, oh, this kid's got nothing. And all of a sudden, Asta showing him up by knocking down Licht. Just showing that Asta does have the strength. And even though he is a peasant with no magic, he can be strong. Now, when we continue down the character development lane, we got Ghost. Because At first, I wasn't expecting anything from this character. He just had a weird sister-loving complex. I did think it was kind of funny every time he tried to kill Asta because Mari loved him, but it all made sense once we found out his backstory, where he was just a traumatized child. That's all he was. Their parents were murdered, they were thrown out on the street, and everything was taken from them, and he did everything he could to help his sister. And that's why he's so obsessed with his sister, because he was doing everything he could to protect her and make sure she was okay. Which is also why he became a criminal, ended up getting thrown in jail, eventually learned that no one will watch over you and they only care about themselves, because no one ever helped him until he joined the Black Bulls, and then he started to realize what was going on, which is why I really liked him and Asta's moments during this, because after everything, it made sense why he didn't trust anyone. But then you had Asta teaching him to trust once again, because he just assumed after he ran away with his sister during the main fight with Barrow that both Asta and Teresa would just run away. However, they didn't. They kept fighting and they did everything to save those kids. And when Ghost came back to realize that's what was going on, I think he kind of realized, oh shit, these guys aren't looking out for themselves and they're putting the kids first. So maybe not everyone is always looking out for themselves and are as selfish as he originally thought. And I liked it too, because Asta taught him that there are people who will defend others no matter what, even unlocking a move which made a barrage of Astas to attack, which I thought was a lot of fun because it gave us some good moments with the character, pushed his character forward, and also by the end of the arc, we learned that he actually cared about Teresa by telling her not to die. Even after they talk terrible to one another, he still cares and shows that, and I thought that was really interesting because it makes it kind of look like he's learning how to trust more people and that he's not so cold-hearted, and that there are people who he genuinely cares about. Because Teresa's there for his sister, I think that's what made him care for her, and I thought that was just a really interesting section showing that maybe he's not just some weird sister-loving complex character, and he actually has more to him. Now, those were the three main characters I wanted to talk about for progression, so if there's any other character progression you did like from this, let me know down in the comments. So now let's jump into the revelations and twist part of this video. This arc did have a lot of those. First of all, we had Ghost's connection to Licht, which still doesn't make any sense to me, but I guess I'll learn eventually, because my first thought was like, oh, is Ghosh someone that was reincarnated? Because Licht did say that everyone was killed and they are trying to resurrect their master, so maybe that has something to do with it. He also had pointy ears, so it kind of points out that he might be part elf. So it makes me wonder, so maybe he was an elf before, and then he was killed and then reincarnated, or something along those lines. Pretty much raising just so many questions where I don't understand what's going on, but I'm very interested to finding out what's going on. Then having Fauna and learning more about the four spirits was really cool. Fauna being alive, was not expecting that after 2 arcs before, but where we did see Mars and we saw her death with his perspective, and it raised a lot of questions about what's going on, because she also had a stone in her head, so it makes me wonder if they put the stone in the head and then resurrected her that way, or maybe if the spirit saved her. I really want to know how Mars reacts to this, because he thought his friend was dead. He lost part of him after she died, and now she's back with the Stitch Grimoire and powerful. My other working theory right now is the fact that this fire spirit was probably what kept her alive, and I'm very curious to see what happens next. Then we have Rhea's copy magic, which was another revelation that I did not expect. Other than him just being able to copy people's magic and use 2 different types at the same time, it was really interesting to see that he was able to copy someone's appearance as well, and that he was pretending to be someone, showing that Licht is one of the Magic Knight captains. At least that's what I'm thinking, unless he was pretending to be someone else. Asta having demon swords and their master's grimoire was something I was not expecting, because it points out more that Asta seems to be this chosen one for something. But if he has their master's grimoire and the Demon Dweller and Demon Slayer, it makes me wonder what other swords could be tied to this master. Is their master gonna somehow come out of Asta? The last part probably doesn't make any sense, but with everything going on, I wouldn't put it past it, where he probably like tries to possess Asta's body or something along those lines. But we still don't have the demon kind of going on with that grimoire, so I'm very curious to see what happens next. I'm hoping I find out sooner rather than later, maybe in the next arc, maybe the arc after that, because that is probably my most anticipated moment now, is figuring out what is going on with Asta and his grimoire and the swords. Also, if we backtrack quickly to the Raya copy magic stuff, I still do think that he is the Golden Dawn captain, especially after the first arc. That is just something that I will hold down until I find out that it's either not true or it is true, and I'm very curious to see what happens, because of the fact that the Golden Dawn captain also has light magic. I mean, it could all be a misdirect, and I've seen animes do this before, and they're making us suspect him, where in the end, it's not actually going to be him, but it is pointing towards that. And then, of course, one of the biggest twists and turns that took by the end of the arc was the fact that Gildra was the traitor among the Magic Knights, which again, still don't think he is the full traitor, but he is a traitor in a sense, because he did sell out the barrier mages and was pretty much just looking out for himself, trying to raise in power by getting wealthy, which makes sense. He's just a scumbag. That's why I don't think he's the real traitor. I think he's just a scumbag, and he's a scapegoat for the actual traitor, because they probably lined it up so if anything happened, they could just point towards him rather than it being the actual traitor that's supposed to be Golden Dawn captain, because we did see him Golden Dawn crest after the first arc with the magic stones. Now, with those twists and turns, we did have a lot of impacts happening for the main story of the anime as well. Now, we're only going to cover so many of the impacts on the story because we did talk about it in like half the other video. So mainly we're going to talk about a couple of them in more detail, some theories I have, and some of the other ones I didn't mention yet. Another real big thing was the fact that the master is not licked. I thought it was licked, but finding out that Asta has the master's grimoire kind of points into another direction. And it also still means that they're collecting the magic stones, which you do by the end of the arc find out that they're still collecting the stones. Because I was very curious when we saw Lick the first time, oh, they resurrected him already. Are we already done with the magic stones plot? But we aren't, and there's still more to come. Fauna being alive was also a big impact, also showing the third eyes and their magic, because they got beast magic, spirit magic, and copy magic, which are all magics I have not seen before. I mean, technically we have seen the spirit magic because of, but the other ones we haven't. The beast magic is still pretty interesting to me. I want to see more of that. Plus, you got Asta, swords, and grimoire. Pretty big impact. Now, the one thing I did forget to mention about this was I'm kind of wondering how Asta was the one that got their master's grimoire and his swords, because of course there was the first sword in the grimoire. That's how we got that one. I'm curious to see why the other sword was in the dungeon, because there must have been a reason for it to be there in that moment, and I'm very curious to see how the reveal of that impacts the story going forward even more. So if it does happen in the next arc, I'm gonna be hyped. We get the Magic Knights traitor, which is a big impact, because now it seems like possibly that these guys might not trust each other even more, because they're gonna be like, well, you could be a traitor, you could be a traitor, and I think it's gonna be putting a lot of distrust within the Magic Knights, because you don't know who you can trust. I'm still kind of hoping that none of the Black Bulls are traitors, so they'll be like the ones on the outside being like, okay, let's track down who the traitor is. And then the last big thing I think from the impact on the story was the fact that the Wizard King believes in Asta, and that's a big moment too, because it shows that Asta's improved a lot from where he first came from, and it's something that he's never felt before. He's never had people being like, you did a great job, because they always saw him as nothing. Oh, look at this kid, he has no magic. Oh, look at him, he's such a loser. But instead, now he's actually achieving the stuff he said he'd go out and achieve. He's a magic knight. He's already making an impact on the organization as a whole, showing that this kid with no magic can do a lot of shit. And he's starting to become trusted and respected by the people he wants to be respected by. And I really like that, especially showing that the Wizard King is someone he wants to be. So finding out that that Wizard King trusts him and is happy with his progress, it probably means a lot to him and pushes his character forward. Now, as I go down my notes, I'm kind of realizing I wrote a lot of stuff twice, because it kind of pertains to everything, because now we got the setup for the next arc. We got tracking down the magic stones, because we got to do that. So we're going to an underwater temple now, which is pretty freaking awesome, and I am excited to see how they do that. And the fact that the Eye of the Midnight Suns are still tracking down the magic stones, it makes me wonder if the Black Bull base is going to get attacked at some point, because Asta does have a stone there. Then we got Yami and the Wizard King's connection, because I think that's just showing that Yami has a closer relationship with him, and that he's like the one person that the Wizard King can trust, and that's where the Black Bulls will probably come in heavily to do most of the stuff, which also just puts our main character Asta front and center. We also have Asta being their secret weapon, being able to go into the underwater temple because he is anti-magic, so he can go through the magic barrier and get them in. On top of it, you have Asta not being able to be sensed because he has no mana, which I think is going to be their secret weapon, where they just throw him into the fight so the bad guys cannot sense him coming, and he can just come out of nowhere and slap them into the wall. And because now he has ki, he can sneak up on them, especially through fog or other kind of distractions, and make it so that he can be the perfect sneak attack. So let's move on to the last little part where we have fun and exciting moments that we need to talk about. I feel like this one's going to be pretty quick, because the first thing I want to talk about is the mixer. That was a fun episode. It wasn't really like a lot, but it did give us our first impression of Rebecca, and I liked how Asta made his impression on her without really trying. He was just being a general good dude and was just being nice, and I really like that, showing that Asta doesn't have to put on this face. He can bond with people because of just being an older brother, and that's what happens there. And also the whole section of Noelle being jealous of Rebecca and everything going on with them was just a lot of fun. I'm sorry, I'm really liking their kind of back and forth right now, and the little jealousy that's been happening behind the scenes, and I think it's a lot of fun because Asta just has no clue about it, and he's just oblivious to all of it, especially after Rebecca gives him the kiss and Noah freaks out. I don't think he understood what was going on there. Asta using Ghosh's magic from that was cool as well, because it's something like the dungeon exploration arc where he used Noelle's water. He now used Ghosh's like mirror magic, which I thought was really cool, showing him use more magic types, and it makes me wonder how that sword's going to work in the future and who else's magic he might be able to copy. Maybe we might see him use some fire, maybe some lightning. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see how it goes forward. Ghosh's reflection save when Licht was using the main move was pretty cool too, having the giant mirror come out. Just a cool hero moment. And then the fight with Yami and Licht was pretty awesome as well, mostly because they showed us how strong Yami's dark magic is, but also gave us some cool backstory, as well as having him trust Asta to join the fight with him. Nozzle, Charlotte, and Jack coming in for the save was a cool moment and funny because of the fact that they kept making remarks towards Yami about sitting on the ground, how useless he was, but then just having Yami not give a shit and cracking jokes on the ground was cool, and also just kind of showing his relationship with the other captains. And I really like what they did. However, I did think that the Magic Knight captains coming in would be a bigger moment rather than just kind of being something that was overdone with pretty quickly. And then also taking down Gildro was a cool moment, and also seeing the youngest Magic Knight captain use his paint magic was pretty cool as well. But yeah, that was the Eye of the Midnight Sun counter arc. This arc did have a lot more shocking twists than I originally thought was going to happen, and it also just really pushed the story along and opening up this world a lot because it gave us the different lands, like where Yami's from, being a foreigner, showing us that there's more stuff going on with Licht and the Eye of the Midnight Suns, and just it keeps adding and adding and adding, and I really like how it dives deep into this world and the lore that goes on with it. And also, I really like how this show tends to point on the theme about discrimination and how the rich look down on the poor, because it kind of puts our main character in a really big spotlight to be like, okay, we have this kid who literally comes from nothing, and he's gonna rise to the top and be unstoppable. Plus, speaking of Asta, his character was pushed to new limits, give him new strength and new powers, and I cannot wait to see him and Yami bond some more, because they definitely bonded during this, and I think it's going to be a cool little mentor-mentee relationship going forward. Absolutely fantastic arc. I cannot wait to see what happens next, because everyone keeps saying it gets better and better, and I want to see what other plot lines get revealed as we progress through the story. But let me know, what did you think about this arc? What was your favorite moment from it? Are there any things that you really liked from it that I didn't mention? And with that, if you did enjoy my arc discussion, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of these, as well as the reactions that go along with them. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time when we watch the next episode for the next arc.